Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Hello my friends, welcome to another weekly wrap up. Today I don't have quite as many books to talk about, but still a good amount. I think there's eight to talk about. There were some good ones in here and also some not so good ones in here, but I did finally have my first 6-star read of the year and I can't wait to talk about it. Yeah, it's gonna be fantastic. Also, a couple other notes, make sure to check out the Etsy shop if you'd like to support me that way. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, like this video. All of that helps me with the YouTube overlords who keep me going. Also, I'm so excited because later this week I have my first paid sponsorship video going up. I've talked about it a little bit with my patrons and I'm so excited. So please check out the video on Thursday and give it lots of love to help me out. This is the very first one that's like officially like there's products and you're paid for it. So yay for me, small booktuber. I definitely have been offered other ones, you know, I'm not being proud. Like you get offered lots of stuff when you have a channel of people trying to get on, but none of it has really went with my channel or been stuff I wanted. You know, there's obviously some affiliates I've had that I've shared stuff from them, but when someone's gonna like pay you to say nice things, it needs to be something I want to say nice things about. And the product that I will be talking about, you'll see why it's a great fit for the channel. So enough of that, let's get into these books. I have a teeny tiny bit of a headache today, so I'm gonna try to get through these in a good amount just because staring at the light is a bit much for my eyes today. Okay, so the first book that I finished just released this week and it was At First Spite by Olivia Dade. Now, I have had a up and down relationship with Olivia Dade. I really enjoyed the first book, spoiler alert, that I read by her, and other ones have been more difficult for me. Like, I love reading books with plus-size characters, I really do, but I want them to be just like every other romance, except she's plus size, or maybe he's plus size. And I just put up a video this last week that was plus size character Rex, and so I love those, but I don't necessarily seek them out, but I know that some people do, and I love to share those. And you know, Olivia Dade is someone who's providing those, and I think that's great. I love that her plus size characters aren't always in a rom-com where they're like making fun of themselves, but on the other hand, this book felt almost a bit too heavy for me, okay? I know I shouldn't have expected it to be a rom-com, but when they continue to give us covers like this, you know, this gives a rom-com vibe. It just does. And so I deeply, deeply loved the hero in this book. And I liked the heroine too, but this was a very heavy story. Anyway, as I said, so this one is actually a ex-fiance's brother in a small town, forced proximity. And our heroine is, I believe she's 37, and she was engaged to Matthew's brother. And Matthew, who he's a doctor, and I think he's actually the same age as the heroine, or like a year older, like they're the same age. His brother, who she was engaged to, is actually like, I think like 5 years younger than she was, which I also thought was cool, but moving on, they're not the couple that was together. Matthew is kind of the reason they broke up. And so naturally our heroine Athena then has a great like dislike for him because she had given up her job, she had given up her home, and she had actually used her savings to buy the house that her fiance wanted. It was a gift to him that they would be living in this house that he'd always wanted to live in his small town. And what her fiance hadn't told her is that the reason he wanted this house so much is because it was right next to his brother, Matthew. And so now she has lost her job, she's lost where she could live, and the home she bought, which needs a lot of like work done to it before it could be resold, that's what they were going to do. this home she sunk all her money into is right next to her nemesis, or who she sees as a nemesis. So she's in quite a pickle. So in the beginning of this, she gets a job at a bakery, and she's right next door to Matthew, and so she's having to see him every day. Now Matthew, what we find out very quickly is that the reason Matthew wanted this, didn't want this marriage to happen, wasn't because he didn't like Athena, which of course is what she thinks is the reason, right? He didn't trust his brother to be a good partner, because his brother has been very babied through his life. And Matthew would know that because Matthew's the one who's done the babying. He basically raised his younger brother because his parents were not mentally there for them after a tragedy that happened in their past. So Matthew's always been very protective, but also his eyes are open to the kind of man that his younger brother is, and he just can't see him being a good partner. So that's still, that's a little high-handed on his part to do that, but we very quickly come to see that Matthew just, number one, is deeply infatuated with Athena, so into her, and also he's heartbroken that it's split up, but he also is this is going to be better in the long run. But he sees the tough time Athena's going through, and he knows she won't want to accept his help. So he goes about doing these little things to help her, even though, some of them she knows about and some of them she doesn't. But anyway, so of course, eventually she'll get past being mad at him, and we'll get into a romance with it. What made this so heavy, though, and difficult is that our heroine goes through a period of literally clinical depression during this book, and it lasted until 70% into the book. I'm just going to tell you that, okay? It takes until 60% before there's any romantic stuff going back and forth, and it's 70% before we start dealing with her depression. And so it just made this whole story very heavy. If this book, and I'm completely honest, if this book had been sold as women's fiction and wasn't going to be in the romance section, this would be a fabulous story. It really would. Because if I had been told it was women's fiction instead of a romance, I would have thought this was a great women's fiction with a beautiful romance in it. But because it's as a romance, there's so many, there's just too many heavy things in it. And for some people, it won't be too much, and it'll be just great for you. Because you know what? It doesn't have any body hate about her. She's not struggling with her weight or struggling with her feelings about her weight. That's not why she's depressed. And so that was nice, because some of other Olivia Dade's, the heroines, hate their bodies, and they may say they don't, but they do. It's very clear in how they talk about themselves. And that just is too toxic for me with my own, weight struggles. But this one, nothing negative was said about her body in her head or the heroes. It was all positive things. It was just a fact of life. But the clinical depression we see her go through is very hard. Now, we do get some beautiful moments of the hero caring for her through that. That, again, I adored this hero. He was everything to me, okay? He was great. But at the end of the day, when this one was done, it isn't one that I'm really going to recommend again, besides having a good plus size hero or heroine. So I ended up giving this one a 3.5 star, and it was a 2 on the spice scale. And again, be warned, there's grief, clinical depression, and discussion of the loss of a child in their infancy or young age. So talked about that longer than I meant to, as usually happens. Okay, next up, we have an upcoming release, which is Tempting Promises by Corinne Michaels. This is book 3 in the Whitlock family. And this one is about Rowan and Charlotte, who are rival dairy farmers, okay? I was so excited for this. So excited for this book. We see their rivalry already shared a bit, we see it in previous ones. Their land is up against each other, and they have this nitpicky thing going back and forth. Rowan has bought land out from under her before. She's forced him to pay more for cattle than he's meant to. They just have this rivalry going back and forth. But a lot of it is, and another reason why she dislikes him is that Rowan dated her sister, and her parents are actually gone. Her parents are dead. And so her and her sister inherited the farm, and she actually bought her sister out of the farm because her sister didn't want it. And Charlotte wanted to continue the family's legacy and run this farm. But it is a struggle. It is difficult. And at the beginning of this book, we see that she has had to get rid of all of her staff except one who is literally just living there because she let him keep his house there. And so her and him are running the whole farm, and he's doing it on a volunteer basis. So there's this contract for with a company that's providing milk to local schools, and both her and Rowan are going for this same thing. Now, Rowan has a bit more of a sophisticated setup. However, she has a license to do organic. She has certified to do organic, and he doesn't. But he does have, he's not by any means like flush with cash, but he has a bit more to work with, and he has more workers working for him, and he has a bigger farm. So there's pluses and minuses to both of what they have. But anyway, that's the setup for them. We'll come back to the dairy farming part because I have a few things to say on that. But the main romance between them, we see the rivalry between them going on, and where kind of like the inciting incident of them like getting together comes from is, of course, they have this going back and forth. But Charlotte would never be with him because he was with her sister, and her sister said that he cheated on her and she caught him. Now, that's not what happened, but she was mad that Rowan didn't want to date her. They were fuck buddies. That is what Rowan does. He's not saying he's a saint, but he never promised her sister they were together. But she told not only her sister, but the whole town that he cheated on her. So he's had a bad reputation for years because her sister did that to him. And so not only is he Charlotte's rival in the dairy industry, but like she hates him on her sister's behalf. Okay. So that's that's the groundwork of what's been laid out. Now, they both have some friends in town, and their friends are friends, and there ends up being this like weekend away that they're going to do at this mountain cabin, and they both get invited by their different friends who invite them. And so there's two couples, and then each couple like brought a friend, and it was these two. So they end up having to like share a room when they're there, and they're like fighting about it. And then she goes for a hike just in time for an ice storm to hit. And so Rowan goes out to find her because she hasn't maybe seen the weather or whatever. And she had hurt her ankle, and they can't make it back to the house in time. So they end up in a hunting shack, and they get stuck there for like 3 or 4 days. So there's a bit of there's literally a like only one sleeping bag. We're stuck. And you guys know how I love survival romances. So right in the middle of this contemporary romance, we had this survival situation, and them needing, for warmth, and him helping her. Literally, she needs his help getting to the bathroom because she's hurt so bad. And so that kind of forces them together. And they, of course, are like, well, whatever happens in the cabin stays in the cabin. And they definitely do some fucking while they're there. Lots of angry fucking happening. And then, the rest of the story will be them trying to be together or not be together after it. So pretty typical, like enemies to lovers, rivals to lovers, small town stuff. It was good. Now, what I will say, this was delightful. I had a great time with this story, but something got in my way and I just couldn't look past it. And I feel really bad. So I want to be clear that for everyone else, this is going to be a 4.5 or 5-star book. It was spicy. It was fun. It was a 3 on the spice scale. There was angry sex. There was survival sex. There was only one sleeping bag. It was great. But where this book, I couldn't get past it, is that I grew up right next to a dairy farm. My best friend's family owned a dairy farm for 18 years. My dad worked on that dairy farm for 10 years. So you cannot tell me that Charlotte was running a dairy farm, because she is a volunteer worker and she's able to go to the woods for a weekend. Who the fuck is milking her cows? Okay, I'm sorry, but any of you who grew up on a farm, the cows don't take a break. They need to be milked twice a day, every day, whether hell has frozen over or it's Christmas Day. Like, you have to be there. And so I just don't, and it's never said, I think, how many cows she has. Rowan at least has workers. Like, he does. He has more than one staff. So it's believable to me that he can be gone for a couple days. But her, who literally doesn't have the money to fix her truck, and she's supposed to be getting an organic deal to supply milk. You have to milk the cows every day. And guess what? Dairy cows they have calves sometimes, because that's how they first start producing. So the whole, I know this won't be an issue for most people. It is a very oddly detailed specific thing that she picked dairy farming, and I have knowledge of it because I know how difficult it was for Sarah's dad, who had workers, to be able to be gone for more than a day. Like, it was very stressful for him to be gone for more than a day because your cows are your livelihood. Cows get sick, cows get hurt, you might need the vet to come out, like, you need that. And so for her to be on her own and have a volunteer, like, and also in the story, like, her sister doesn't live in town anymore and her sister wants her to come visit, and she can never go visit her sister. But she can go to the woods for 3 days and leave the volunteer worker taking care of however many cows there are. Like, again, I'm sorry. I'm sorry it's a mini rant. And again, I hope it doesn't ruin enjoyment for anyone else. But, like, I have to tell you that it was bugging me so bad because anytime she would decide to, like, there was also times where, like, she got drunk and slept in. Like, you can't do that. The cows have to be milked at either, like, 12 hours apart, twice a day, every day. 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. is when it always happened at the neighbor's farm. 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. No matter how many cows there are that are getting milked, they have to have that. So anyway, my farm girlies, give me the out of it, right? My dad, he had a dairy cow 2 years ago. We had a single cow. He had to milk her twice a day, every day. He didn't go anywhere for 6 months because we had a milk cow. So I'm just saying, I don't believe that Charlotte's running her dairy farm on her own and is able to go places because you just can't. You can't do it. So that's my mini rant, which again went on longer than I meant to. I'm sorry. It's an oddly specific thing for me. The book was beautiful. The romance was fun. It was sexy. But Corinne Michaels made them dairy farmers, and I know what a dairy farmer's life is. So there we go. All right, moving on. I'm so sorry. It's just, I can't help it. Okay, I know things. Okay, so Return of the Duke by Lorraine Heath. I haven't read a Lorraine Heath in way too long. It's a crime. And so most of her books are all on Anyplay, and I still buy them when they come out because I love her, so I buy her books. But this one was book 3 in the Once Upon a Dukedom. I've actually already read the first book in the Chessman series, which comes after that, but I hadn't read this one. So this one is finally about Marcus Stanwyck, who his father, the Duke of Wolford, was hanged for an assassination attempt on Queen Victoria. If you've read the previous books in this series, you've seen his siblings having to deal with, this. And Marcus has been in hiding, and he's been trying to discover more about if his father was the only one involved in this plot and like what was going on. And so he's been keeping an eye on Esme Lancaster, who was his father's mistress, and he sees her as a heartless harlot. So he wants information from her to see if his father ever talked about the plot and blah, blah, blah. Well, once he finally gets his hands on her, he starts watching her, and eventually she admits to him that she wasn't really his father's mistress. It was all kind of an appearance thing because he wanted a reason to be like sneaking out to see someone. But also she's actually a spy for the crown. Okay. And she actually used to work for Queen Victoria until something happened where she could no longer be in her service, but she became a spy. So she was actually trying to find out who's really behind the plot as well, because she knows that his father wasn't the one behind it. Even though he was involved with some of the people, he wasn't the mastermind behind this assassination attempt. So they end up teaming up together and falling for each other. So this was very fun. There was espionage. It was a good time. I loved it. And I gave this one 4 stars. And it was a 2.5 on the spice scale. And yeah, there was some great history and stuff involved in it. And so I loved that. All right, next was a little fanfic that I read. That was a Snamini. And this one was called Slowly Goes the Night by Serpent Fanged, is who the fanfic author of it was. And it was a bit crazy. I won't lie. It was a bit crazy. It was mostly an erotic one. It was all sex all the time. But it starts with Severus Snape. So it takes place, I believe it's supposed to be like 6th and 7th year is when it's supposed to be happening, I think. But either way, Snape has come back from a meeting with Voldemort where he was tortured for a while because he's not doing what Voldemort wants him to. And Hermione happens to be out for a nighttime fly, which apparently in this version of it, she likes to go for a fly by herself. And she sees Snape like he is like injured in the woods. And so she ends up bringing him back to the castle, and she is like, please don't tell him that I'm the one who found him. And then like, I'm going to go back to my room. Sorry, you didn't see me. But she rescues Snape and brings him back. And now Snape, he in his mind has this vision of this like angel who came and rescued him basically, which was that's kind of cute. And a couple nights later, Hermione's going on another fly, and she sees him in this meadow again, and this time she goes down to see him, though she like hides her face, and he's actually pleasuring himself thinking about this angel who saved him. So he doesn't know that it's one of his students or what's going on. And they end up having a spicy little rendezvous together, and eventually with their midnight visits, she shows him who she is. And so he struggles a little bit knowing that it's one of his students, but it doesn't last long because he's so infatuated with her. And then once that's revealed, the rest of this is just all very kinky sex. So this had age play, lactation kink, squirting, anal fluids, a belly kink. Like, this had a lot of stuff. And it was only 212 pages, and it was crazy. So yeah, slowly goes the night, super erotic, super sexy. Have a great time with it, all right? Have a great time. Okay, then I had a reread of God of Pain by Rena Kent. I'm rereading and annotating these for one of my patrons who is reading this series. So this is book 2 in the Legacy of the Gods, and this one is Creighton King and Annika Volkov. So yeah, this is Jeremy's younger sister and Eli's younger brother. And also, I was excited to reread this because Rena said that preparing for God of War, which will be the last book in the series, this one tells us the most about Eli, which makes sense because Eli is Creighton's older brother. And I did pick out a lot of things that we learn about Eli and what I think are clues to what's going on between Ava and Eli. I mean, I know they're going to be together. Like, I know that part. But I just believe there's more of like a history and like details going on behind that. And I'm trying to figure out what it is. So rereading this was very helpful. But anyway, Annika is kind of into Creighton. He's very quiet. He doesn't speak much. And she starts kind of like poking at him a little bit because she wants his attention. And at one point, she's like, I want to like see you. Like, I want to go on a date with you. And he's like, I don't date. I fuck. And I do twisted shit. You don't want to mess with me. And so she's like, oh, well, what kind of stuff? So she's curious, but very quickly she's like, okay, maybe I don't want to do anything, but now it's too late. And he's like, who is this little, not little, she's not like little, but like, he's only 2 years older than her. Who is this interesting creature who has caught my attention? And so she gets herself in over her head very quickly. This one, I forgot how absolutely wild this one is. So obviously too, based on the title, like, Creighton is very into pain. He is a sadist. So there is a lot of kinky, like, pain-filled, like, stuff together. And Annika, she's never had sex at all before, so all of this is new to her. But yeah, it's very interesting, some of the situations she gets herself into with him. And where this story goes, the reveals that come out about how Creighton and her family are connected is very interesting. Not related connected, but connected in other ways. So yeah, this one was still did I give this one 4.5 or a 5? This one, it was still a 5-star. And is a 4.5 on the spice scale. And this one, like a lot of hers, it has somnophilia, bondage, anal, spanking, double con, kidnapping. It has everything. So be prepared. Be prepared for it to get crazy. Where did I put that book? I don't even know. Oh, it's over there. Okay. All right. Next up, I read the arc for Love Contract by Sophie Lark. And this is my first 6-star read of the year. I know, none of us are surprised I gave it to a Sophie Lark. However, I was pretty nervous to read this one, okay? So I really don't want to spoil this one because I very much want you all to read it, but I will tease you teeny bits about what made it so good. And once this book is out and stuff, I'm sure I'll be recommending it and other things. You know, it's a 6-star read. I'm going to bring it up a whole bunch. But I have to tell you guys that I feel like Sophie's entering a completely different, like, tier of her writing to me. This book was so like reserved, and I know that sounds like a weird word, but if you guys read Grimstone or even Minx, which I liked Minx, or you read The Savage, you know how like all out some of Sophie's books go. Like, I always describe them as over the top, balls to the wall. And they're just very, like, manic sometimes, which can be very fun. Like, I did enjoy Minx. It was super hot. It was spicy. It was kinky. Like, it was all these things. But Grimstone was that times a million, and I wasn't even comfortable with that book. Like, it was crazy to me. But Love Contract, a couple things about it to not, like, again, I don't want to spoil this one. It's sold as like an enemies to lovers, but I would really more call it of like, these two had went to high school together, these characters did, and they didn't have a great relationship back then. But they're not like enemies. But when the story starts, our hero, Sully, does blackmail Theo into helping him with something. So Theo is an assistant to a billionaire type guy. He's like an Elon Musk type guy. And Sully wants to do a business deal with him. And he is very good at reading people. He's good at doing his research. And when he discovers that this guy's assistant is someone he went to high school with, he does his research and he finds something that he's able to hold over her head. So yes, it does feel like it starts as from an enemy's place, right? Because he blackmails her into doing something or whatever. And that means like he wants her to fake date him. So this is a fake dating. He blackmails her into it. And it seems like it's going to be an enemies to lovers thing. But that really only lasts for like the very little bit, because these two start to discover that they have so much in common that they didn't know when they were in high school and that they didn't know, about each other now. Okay. They've both had some really tough stuff in their life. I don't want to spoil all those things because we'll see them. But so yeah, so it's fake dating, starts as kind of that. But again, it doesn't stay as an enemies to lovers. It actually becomes a friends to lovers very quick, because these two just click so well, and not sexually wise. Like, of course they'll click sexually, but this is a slow burn, tension filled. It is still sexy because it's Sophie Lark, but she does not rush us to orgasm in this book. Let's just say it. We'll say it like it is. This isn't fucking on the first date type of couple. These two, like I said, it becomes a friends to lovers, especially when it becomes a forced proximity when Theo's home has to get fumigated. And so because her fake boyfriend is Sully, for appearance's sake, she moves in with him. And there's some very interesting things that happen once she moves in. And those are the things I don't want to spoil at all, because it was just so great. But there's so many things that you'll unravel while they are there. And of course, we'll then meet the other two characters that will have books, because the next one will be Sully is a twin. He has a twin brother named Reese, who is an actor. And then he has a dad named Merrick. And the third book is going to be about his dad, who I was deeply moved by his dad. And again, like, a lot of the reasons this is a 6-star book, I don't want to spoil them for you guys yet, because it's a contemporary. There's not a whole lot to like hide. But what I will say too is that this was such a beautifully, as I said, it was like reserved. Like, there was things you have to peel it back. And there was a lot of the most romantic moments were very quiet, soft things, things we all love out of a contemporary romance. The final thing I want to like warn about this is I believe that I have maybe misrepresented this book in some of my talks about it. I don't want to put that on the ad, like they're like marketing about it, because I don't think it was ever marketed this way. It was me thinking that. This isn't a rom-com. I thought that's what it was, or what it was being put out to be. This isn't a fake dating rom-com. And it isn't trying to be like, yeah, there's some funny moments in it, but it isn't for hilarity. It's not like it's super dark or heavy, but it's a contemporary, right? Like, it's along some of the other lines of, books I've talked about in this, like Tempting Promises, maybe, along those same lines of, it's just a contemporary romance. It's not trying to be a rom-com. And I appreciated that about this, because again, there are some topics that are discussed and worked through that it would have been wrong if the story was a rom-com and it was telling them. So, okay, I've said enough about it without really saying anything at all. But as I said, I will bring it up once this book is out, once I start recommending it for things that, and those of some of you who know me, you'll know why this was a 6-star read for me very quickly. And yeah, a lot of that is just with how beautifully Sophie unraveled this story. There's no third act breakup in here. There's a slow burn. And this is actually the lowest spice that I've read of hers, probably since like the Underworld books. And some of those are even pretty spicy. But that doesn't mean it was missing its tension. I just mean this was not a sex-focused story the way I feel that Grimstone and Minx were. And that's not bad. Minx was a 6-star read for me. But this book is a new level. And I'm not even kidding. If you are a deep fan of hers, I think you'll like this. Also, if you've never read a Sophie Lark because you don't like dark romance or you don't like mafia, or you don't like those, this is one you can absolutely read. The only real trigger warnings in this one are alcoholism, the loss of a parent due to illness, and then grief. So those are, you know, those are triggers that show up in a lot of places. But yeah, I highly recommend, if you've never read a Sophie Lark, you can absolutely start with this one. I will be recommending this as just a straight up book people can read. And I am so excited for the next 2 books. I think Relationship Clause is the next one. And then, yeah, so the next one is supposed to be another like fake dating, but I don't know if it's a second chance or not. I can't remember, but that one will be a fake dating. The third one with Merrick is going to be a bodyguard, age gap, grumpy sunshine. And I am so excited. I love a daddy. I love a daddy so hard. So yeah, this is my first 6-star read of the year. And you know what? I don't even care if I'm biased. You all know that I am. But I'm also honest. None of you can say I wasn't honest about my feelings about Grimstone. So I'm shooting you straight here with Love Contract. I think it's one of her best works. And I also like how different this is from other stuff she's done. I adored it. So yeah, this was a 6-star read for me. This was a 2 on the spice scale, but it was like a 4 on the swoon scale. It was great. I don't officially have a swoon scale, so don't ask me what my swoon scale is. It's just great. Okay, and then the last one I finished was Second Down Darling by Lex Martin, which is I will explain myself. This is book 4 in the Varsity Dad series, which is just out of nowhere, I understand. This is a whole series of single dads, and I'm getting the arc of book 5, because I saw the ARC sign up going around for this book and it said it's a Not His Baby. And y'all know that's my crack this year, is Not His Baby. That's just what I'm all about. And that one said it was not his baby. And they said, like, you don't have to have read the books before it, but they sent me a copy of book 4 because and I understand why they did now, because the setup of how the heroine becomes pregnant is in this one. Because she's going to be who book 5 is about. But this one is about Jake and Charlotte, and this one was a bit of a twisty, turny road for sure. So this one, Charlotte, she was in love with Jake when they're young. They're friends in high school. They've been friends since they were 14, and she has an older sister. Just a couple years older than her, or just like a year older than her, I think. And they had actually been child stars when they were young. They were on a reality show together or something like that. And Charlotte isn't into it anymore, but her sister really is. Her sister's still into acting. But when her sister's 19 and Charlotte's 18, her sister actually hooks up with Jake at a party. Jake doesn't know this is her sister, apparently. I'm still a little unclear about how he didn't know that, but in the story, it said he didn't, because he never would hang out with her sister. He hung out with her. It's very clear to me that her sister knew who he was, though, because this sister hates Charlotte. It's awful. But Charlotte's sister gets pregnant. And so, yeah, so then there goes her chance of being with Jake, because now Jake is her nephew's dad. And so for the first, like, few months of her nephew's life, she's around a lot to, like, help out. But it becomes too much for her to watch her sister and Jake together. And so it's time, she transfers schools. She doesn't tell any of her family, like, which school she went to, and she's making it on her own. Now, 3 years later, Jake ends up being a football player at the same school she's at, which, again, huge coincidences going on, we know. But she had never told him where she went. She left him a note, but for some reason he didn't get that note. you know, because someone's an interfering bitch. But he's very angry when he first sees her because he's like, you just cut me out of your life. And she's like, you never reached out to me. And he's like, anyway. So now they're at the same school, and yeah, his son is like almost 4 and he's in football, and she's going to that school and she's a photographer, and there is just a lot between them that needs to be like worked out and everything. So I was enjoying this quite a bit. I did end up grabbing the audio because the audio was only $1.99 when I had the Kindle. So I did get the audio, and it was narrated by Sarah McEwen and Timothy Andres Pabon. I don't know. He is actually a Hispanic hero, so that's kind of cool. And then where this went off, though, is that the sister was literally a villainous, evil bitch. And it went so over the top. Like, it was bad enough that it was clear that I don't think she got pregnant on purpose, because it did mess with her career for her to be pregnant. But she definitely fucked her sister's friend on purpose and just completely fucked with her head for all of that. So yeah, the evil sister just went too hard in this, and it derailed a lot of my feelings for the book. So I did end up at 3.5 stars for this one. It was a 3 on the spice scale. Like I said, there was a toxic ex, there's abusive family, gaslighting, and yeah, some of that. But I did like the setup for the next one, which I think is called Heartbreaker Handoff, and that is the one I'll be reading in March. So very intrigued for that one. But anyway, those are all the books I read in this last week. Let me know what your favorite is. I'll have links to all of these down below. Make sure you snag some of these new releases, give these authors some love, and make sure you check out the Etsy shop for some of my cute book sleeves and other bookish gifts. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye.